I'm Roxy, this is Boo, and today we're going to be working on flexibility for deep squats. This is a very beginner-friendly, knee-friendly routine, and it would be helpful if you had a couple of blocks. If you don't have blocks, something like books or a pillow would be very helpful. Just something you can prop either your feet or your hips up against. You'll see when we get to it. And a wall. We will be doing a couple of different poses against the wall today. So make sure you bring your mat close to a wall and you have something to prop yourself up on. And we're going to start with our warm-up by kind of getting started with some squats. So go ahead and stand up. And you're going to want your feet to be outside hip width apart, feet turned out about 15 degrees or so. And then what you're going to do is you're going to reach for the ground. If the ground is kind of far away, you can put your hands on your knees or your elbows on your knees, but we're just going to kind of lower our hips and then raise them up. These are called gorilla squats. And not only are they a good warm-up, they kind of help me figure out where my leg placements should be, especially if you have tight ankles. Sometimes when people just try to go into squats, they're in a spot that's not really comfortable for them. And I find that gorilla squats can be really helpful as a way to figure out where your most comfortable squat stance is. So remember, if you're just here today, that is totally fine. Okay, now we're going to start expanding on this by doing moon squats. So what you're going to do is completely let yourself collapse in at the bottom. And then as you exhale, you're going to stand up, lean back, and reach for the sky. Then you're going to go ahead and come back down, completely relaxing at the bottom. And stand up, reach for the sky, opening up the chest, elongating the spine. We're basically trying to get every single joint moving here. Let's go ahead and do one more. And then we'll get into our first stretch. So we're going to start with stretching out our calves, because a lot of time when people have deep squatting issues, it might be the hips, but tight ankles and calves can be a big cause of it too. So you're going to go ahead and face a wall, and you're going to put your foot up on your block or whatever firm surface like a book you might have. I prefer to be a little bit farther away from the wall. It doesn't really matter how far you are though. We're going to step on the block, put all of our weight into that heel. We're going to keep our legs straight for now and hold this for 2 minutes. And this is our first deep flexibility pose. Now, in gravity yoga, the type of yoga that I teach here, we generally hold our poses for 2 to 5 minutes per pose. This really allows the muscles to relax and lengthen, allows your nervous system to relax. And while we are in these poses, we also try to do something called 2x breath. So a 2x breath is where your exhales are twice as long as your inhales. So let's go ahead and start practicing that together. Let's do a 2-second inhale and a 4-second exhale. Breathe in through the nose for 1, 2, and out through the mouth for 4, 3, 2, 1. One more breath like this. In, 2, out, 2, 3, 4. Good. Let's try lengthening that now to 3, 6. So in for 3 seconds. And out for 6 seconds. One more, in for 1, 2, 3, out for 6, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. One more breath like this. ahead and keep stretching this calf, but we're gonna do so with a bent knee now. And we are doing this because there are actually two different calf muscles. There's the gastrocnemius and the soleus, at least as far as like the main calf muscle that we think about. And so with a straight knee, you are stretching one part of it. And then with a bent knee, you are stretching the other muscle. So it's good to make sure that we get both. For me, I know that this is definitely where my tightness is right here with the bent knee. I grew up playing soccer, and I was also a klutz. So that means that pretty much every year I fell and either twisted or sprained or strained my ankle in one way or another. So my biggest restriction when it comes to Duber squats is definitely ankle mobility, which is why this part is very important. And I like to get it done first. Okay, let's tune back into that breathing. We were at 3-6, so inhale for 3 seconds. And out for 6. Now let's go ahead and try lengthening that to 4-8. And this is the longest that we will get. So inhale for 4. Exhale for 8. In for 4. Out for 8. Great job. All right, we're gonna go ahead and switch our feet now so that we're working on the other leg. So now put your left leg up on the block. And we're gonna start again with a straight leg. Now, this block is a little bit tall for me. I can kind of barely get my other foot on the ground. You can always take your other block and prop it under your foot, or use a shorter block. Like I said, my ankles are an area where I still need to do a bit more work on. So for me, this is quite a deep stretch. And remember here that we're trying to focus on keeping the knee straight for these first 2 minutes. Okay, if you're not already, tune back in with that breathing, the 4-8. So in for 4. And out for 8. So we do the 2x breath because it's another nervous system hack. In other words, when your exhale is twice as long as your inhale, it relaxes your nervous system. And when your nervous system is relaxed, your muscles are more receptive to being stretched. We've got about 30 more seconds left before we bend our knee. Now, any of those 2x breathing times that we did, so 2-4, 3-6, 4-8, they will all calm your nervous system down. Do try to stick with 4-8 if you can. There are certainly some poses for me especially when my stomach is being compressed, I'm laying on my stomach, where it's hard for me to be able to do a 4-8 breath. Go ahead and bend your knee. as we get into that second half of the movement. To finish my sentence, I think there are some areas where I stick with like a 3-6, or if it's very intense, sometimes it goes down to a 2-4, but try to keep your breathing at 4-8, especially during the really long holds. Counting your breath can help give your mind something to do. To keep it busy, to keep it occupied. I heard a quote once, and I wish I were better at remembering who to attribute these quotes to, but it says something along the lines of, your mind quits before your body does. And when we're holding these deep, long stretches, a lot of people find that to be the case. I find that to be the case. My mind wants to be done way before I know that my body has gotten the most benefit out of the stretch that it can. And the counting your breath, the 4-8 breathing, can really help you get through those times when your mind wants to quit, even though your body can keep going. So in for 4 seconds. And out. We've got about 10 more seconds here. Okay, good. Go ahead and take your block, move it aside. And we're going to work on our hips a little bit more now. So we're going to do a hip CAR, which stands for controlled articular rotation. Basically, we're going to try to warm up our outer hips a little bit more, activate them before we go into a deep stretch. So you're going to get on your hands and your knees and really focus on bracing your core. So don't let your back arch and don't let your hips sway from side to side as you do this. What you're going to do, try not to kick my dog here, is you're going to take your first knee, so I'm going to start with my right leg, bring it up to your wrist, bring it up and out as far as you can. Again, keeping the trunk of your body still, and then bringing it back in. We're going to do 4 more of these. Go to your elbow, up, over, and back down. Where you should really be feeling this is in your outer hip. Trying to get as much of a range of motion in there as you can. 2 more. Try not to lean too much towards the left, but use your core to keep the weight evenly distributed on both hands. We got 1 more. Okay, let's go ahead and switch sides. 5 on this side. So bring that left knee up to your elbow, out, as wide as you can, and then bring it back down. I don't know if you can tell, but like my hips are actually shaking. I'm pushing out so hard. That's 2. 3. 4. Got 1 more. And 5. Okay, so now we're going to go ahead and do a figure 4 stretch, but we're going to do it up against the wall. Let me move these blocks aside so you can see a little better. All right, so what you're going to do is sit next to the wall. You're going to lay back and bring your legs up the wall. So for a figure 4 stretch, what you're going to do is you're going to take your right leg and you're going to bend it so that your right ankle is on your left leg. So this is the upside down figure 4 stretch. Now, if this is already a deep stretch, you can stay here. If you want a little bit more, practice bending this long leg here. So the more you bend it, the more intense the stretch begins. So go ahead and find a spot to you where you feel a stretch. Now, how deep should your stretch be? Where it is in terms of how it looks is not so important as much as how it feels. So on a scale of 1 to 10, with 0 being like snooze, I'm asleep right now, and 10 being like I'm probably going to injure myself if I keep doing this, you should be at about a 7. Unless you are stretching an area that has recently been injured, like if you've had an outer hip injury recently, like a strain or a tear, then you should be like a 5 out of 10. Another important principle in the science of stretching, or gravity yoga, what we're doing here, is the wet noodle principle. So in other words, try to completely relax your body as much as possible. I keep talking with my hands, but you really should be still as much as possible. So this should be relaxed. For me, I have to constantly remind myself to not clench my right butt cheek. Our body gets very protective around stretching the pelvis region, so like the hips and the inner thighs, and that's actually very common. Like those are your reproductive organs. They're very important to your, I guess, survival of the human species, and so it's very common for this area to get very seized up, which is why we need to practice that 2x breath in our wet noodle approach in order to convince the nervous system that, hey, you know, I'm here on purpose. I'm relaxed. You can allow this stretch to happen. And I don't know if you noticed me just shifting there, but I got to a point where I was ready for a little bit of a deeper stretch, so I moved my leg forward a little bit. A part of the wet noodle principle, though, is to move as little as possible. Like if you need to push deeper into a stretch or work your way out of it a little bit, if it's creeping up past that 7 number mark, you can. But try not to fidget. This is about relaxing into the stretch. You can stay here for 1 more minute. We're going to be in this one for 4 minutes total. So go back to that breathing. In for 4, 3, 2, 1. And out for 8, 7, 6, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. Inhale. And exhale. Thirty more seconds. Inhale. And exhale. Okay, go ahead and straighten that top leg. I like to wiggle it a little bit here. And then get into the same position on the other side. So that means putting your left ankle on your right knee. And again, if here feels good today, stay there. If you want more, start bringing that long leg down the wall. So you're bending that knee and you're pressing your bent leg closer into your body. Now, you should never experience pain in any of these positions. If you're experiencing pain, then we need to modify the movement somehow. For this position can sometimes trigger knee issues for some people. If you intentionally flex this foot, it will engage the muscles in front of your shin, which is a part of what supports the knee. So if this strains your knee, go ahead and flex your foot so that all these can be engaged, and that'll help protect your knee. I prefer to stay as relaxed as possible here. But this is really about doing what feels right in your body. A lot of traditional yoga classes are have very specific standards for what the poses should look like and how they should be done. But here we're looking more for a feeling than we are for a particular alignment. Each body is tight in different places, and you might need a slightly different version of a movement in order to feel the proper stretch. I should also say, if you have pretty decent external hip mobility here, and you can't quite get deep enough here, you can always scoot your hip back from the wall that way, so that you can really bring your leg back into you. You could also do this without the wall, just holding behind you. But I find that I'm able to relax into this pose more when I'm supported by the wall. I can get more wet noodly when I don't have to hold on with my arms. Okay, we've got about a minute left on this side. Let's go back to remembering our breathing. That 4-8 breath. So inhale for 4. Exhale for 8. And as you lie here, notice where your breath is going. In other words, is your chest rising? Are your ribs expanding? Or is your belly rising? Here we really want to focus on diaphragmatic breathing. So in other words, the air should be filling up your tummy, because that helps relax your nervous system. Chest breathing will really trigger your nervous system in a way that won't let you relax your fight or flight nervous system. Okay. Go ahead and straighten your legs again. Give them a little wiggle. Okay. We're going to move away from the wall a little bit so you can get some blood back into your feet. And we are going to work on opening up the front of the hips, the hip flexors. So for here, you're going to need a block or pillow, a bolster, something along that line. And what you're going to do is find a flat edge. So you can do the short side, the medium side, the super tall side. And you're going to lie on your back and place the block under your back right here on your bony part right here. So go ahead and take a seat back. And again, depending on how tight your hip flexors are, that will vary how high you should stack your blocks. And remember, there is no right or wrong. It's just whatever feels good to you right now. I've definitely seen some people like double stack blocks or stack them like this, and just do whatever feels comfortable. Feel free to move around a little bit as you get there, but then try to stay still. This is one of my favorites because it is super passive and it's just such a juicy feeling in the hips. You'll see what I mean in a second. So we're gonna lay back. I like this height, so I'm going to go ahead and place it right here. And again, you might need to shift it around to find this spot. These cork blocks are not super comfortable for this one. I prefer the foam ones, but I don't know where I put them at the moment. So once you've found this spot, let's see, I'm hitting the wall a little bit. I'm going to scoot this way. There we go. All right, I'm going to start the timer. Just need to shift it a little bit lower. There we go. Okay, so the hip flexors are this part right here, right in the front of your body. And they actually are the only muscle in your body that is both part of the upper body and the lower body, right? So it connects down here and here, connects your upper and lower halves. And for people who spend a lot of time sitting down in chairs and whatnot, let's be real, that's probably most of us. The hip flexors can get really tight from being that from being in that shortened position all the time. This is an excellent one to help open that up. Remember your breathing, in for 4. Out for 8. Now breathing is actually extra important here, because as I said, your hip flexors, your iliopsoas, they connect right up here to right down here, so right around where the belly button is, to inside your hips, or sorry, I guess towards your inner thighs. And so they connect to the bottom of the diaphragm. They share the same connective tissue. And so when you really focus on diaphragmatic breathing here, it also helps to stretch and release the psoas muscles. So see if you can notice that feeling as you're breathing. Try to breathe into this area. And release. And remember, if at any point this becomes too much or too little for you, you can adjust the height of the block. If you'd also like to get a little bit of a bonus upper body stretch, I'm not in a great position for this, but you could always, I can reach. There's a little bit of space. You can always reach your arms out behind you. And this even just like further lengthens all of this here. We're going to be holding this one for the full 5 minutes. So just spend the last minute really focusing in on your breath. And notice if sometimes when you exhale, you just feel your hips open and release just a little bit more. 30 more seconds here. And I'd also like to mention that these times that I am giving you are suggested times. We're aiming for 2 to 5 minutes. But if you ever need to leave a pose and meet me back in child's pose, that's absolutely okay. The goal is just to meet or beat your time held each time we do this. Okay, let's go ahead and get out of this pose by walking our heels in towards our hips. Kind of press down through your shoulders and your elbows so you can lift your hips up and move that block over. Good. As you lay your hips down, I like to just windshield my knees a little bit from side to side just to get a little bit more movement going. Okay, now we're going to go ahead and do some stretches for inner thighs. So we're going to come back to the wall like we were with that figure four stretch and essentially do like a wall middle split. So let's go ahead and scooch our hips back. Okay, and so as a reminder, you want to sit next to the wall, then lay back, and bring your feet up the wall. Okay, so the pose is going to look like this. So make sure you have enough space on either side of your wall. But before we get into the relaxing bit, I want to do some activation exercises for your hips, kind of PNF style stretching. So what we're going to do first is we are going to try to bring our legs together, but use our hands to resist. And then you're going to relax. We're going to do 4 more of these. So try to bring your legs together and then use your hands to push them apart. For 3, 2, 1, relax. Together, 3, 2, 1, relax. 2 more. Squeeze for 3, 2, 1, relax. And squeeze for 3, 2, 1, relax. Okay. So now, tune back in with that deep breathing. Inhale for 4 seconds. And exhale for 8. And there's a lot of different ways to stretch your inner thighs, but personally, I like this one best because this is the one that I can be the most passive in. A lot of times when people try to get into stretching their hips with some of the more upright seated poses, they might notice tightness in their back because they might also have tight hamstrings or something else going on. So I find that when we're laying here in our back, our upper body is completely taken out of it, then we are able to more deeply relax our muscles here. And the movement that we did at the beginning of this, the resisted stretching exercise, it's just another thing that helps relax the nervous system. The way I like to think of it is when you go into a deep stretch that your body's not used to, it seizes up, right? It sees it as unsafe. It's trying to protect you from injuring itself. So all of these little tricks that we're doing here with the deep breathing, the wet noodle, the activation exercises, are all just different ways to talk to your nervous system and be like, look at me, I'm calm. I can have some strength here at this end range of motion. I am doing this on purpose. Allow me to relax a bit. Allow me to deepen my stretch. I don't know if you guys can see on the camera, but like this whole wall, this whole mural that I painted has like windshield wiper marks on it from all of the times that I've done this exercise. Someday I'll have to repaint it, but it'll be worth it. You got about 1 more minute here. I don't always have such long holds in my beginner classes, but I've chosen such passive stretches that most people are able to hold for a long time, which is why we're moving really slowly today. Really focusing on relaxing into the stretch. More seconds, and then we'll get into our final deep stretch pose, which will be a squat. One more big breath here. Okay, now after all that relaxing, my legs need a little bit of help come back together. Good, and then we're gonna go ahead and swing our legs down to the floor, get up onto our hands and our knees. All right, and we're going to find that deep squat. Now, there's different ways you can try to get into it. You can stand up and do gorilla squats, kind of like we had done earlier towards the beginning. Or you can try doing gorilla squats from the bottom. It kind of just depends on what your mobility is. But for me, I like to just bring one foot up, lean forward, and then get into the other side. I kind of like to shift back and forth a little bit, figure out where it is that my ankles feel the most comfortable. And we're going to do a few active gorilla squats first to help you find that spot. So go ahead and lift your hips. And again, if you are here today, that is totally fine. So lift your hips, either reach for the floor, put your hands on your legs, squat down, reach up, squat down, reach up. Let's do one more. Now we're just gonna hang out here for about 3 minutes or so. Now, if this is not available to you, or it just doesn't feel good today, there are ways to modify this. If you have really bad ankle mobility, like I used to, you might find it more comfortable to actually try to do this about a half a foot away from the wall. Again, I'm still working on my hip mobility here, but I've taken my ankle mobility out of it. Pros and cons to this, right? I'm not working on my ankle mobility like the way it was when I was away from the wall, but I am really sinking deep into my hips right now. This kind of hip mobility isn't quite available to me when I'm away from the wall because I still need to work on my ankle mobility a little bit more. I can wet noodle a little bit better here. Another option, if you don't want to be up against the wall, is to come back here and place a block or two under your bum in order to make this available, especially if you've had knee injuries and this depth is hard for you. You might find something like this more comfortable. And again, it doesn't even have to be just the one block. It can be 2 blocks. Let me rearrange myself there. For some people, this is a deep squat, and there's nothing wrong with that. If this is where you're at, if you're on your blocks or if you're on a stool, I still want you to think about wet noodle. I still want you to be leaning forward and remembering that 2x breath. So we've got about 1 more minute left here. Really leaning forward, becoming as passive as you can. So you have this space, it can be really helpful to bring your palms up. This kind of forces you to not use your arms and be a bit more passive. Just 20 more seconds. Last breath. Okay, go ahead and come down to a comfortable seated position, whatever that looks like for you. If you want to sit cross-legged, you want to sit on your knees, if you've used the stools or blocks and you want to sit on those, that's perfectly fine. I'm just going to bring this all together with a little balanced breathing, so a 4-4 breath. So we're just going to breathe in for 4 seconds. And out for 4 seconds through the nose. A few more breaths like that. In for 4, 3, 2, 1. Out, 2, 3, 4. In, 2, 3, 4. Out, 2, 3, 4. If the 2x breath was designed to ground us and relax our nervous system, a more balanced 4-4 breathing kind of brings you up and out of it a bit more gently, prepares you for the rest of your day. All right, and that is our class. Thank you for stretching with me, and